Madison Blair stepped into the gleaming lobby of Vantage Corp's downtown headquarters, the hum of glass doors sliding shut behind her. The morning commute had left a sheen of sweat on her forehead, her casual black tank top clinging slightly to her back, and her gray workout leggings showing faint smudges from the bike ride. She had come straight from the early spin class, determined to hit the ground running in her first day as the new head of marketing, but the truth was, she hadn't had time to change. The reception area was all polished chrome and sharp angles, with trim staff in tailored suits moving with precise efficiency. Madison adjusted her simple leather tote and took a breath, feeling the quiet weight of curious eyes. A few employees whispered behind their hands, their gazes flickering over her, an unspoken question in their glances. This was not the look they expected for someone stepping into a senior role. From across the room, Cassandra, the office administrator with a reputation for exacting standards and a razor-sharp tongue, narrowed her eyes as she spotted Madison. Cassandra's perfectly styled chestnut hair and crisp white blouse radiated confidence. She approached with a slight smirk, voice loud enough for the nearby onlookers. "Well, aren't you just soaking in the wrong dress code today?" she said mockingly. "Since you're here, assistant, how about fetching the meeting room keys? We wouldn't want someone too important wandering into the wrong conference." Madison met Cassandra's gaze with calm eyes but said nothing to correct the mistake. Instead, she nodded politely and replied, "Right away," and turned toward the administrative desk without hurry. The whispered chuckles behind her settled into a murmur, blinking into a sudden hush. Madison's footsteps echoed softly against the polished marble floor as she moved past the rows of sleek desks. The office buzzed with a quiet intensity, phones hummed, keyboards clicked, and soft conversations floated through the air. Employees went about their tasks, glancing furtively at her, their expressions a blend of curiosity and thinly veiled skepticism. Madison kept her gaze steady, swallowing the slight sting of Cassandra's barbed remark and the smirk she left in her wake. Reaching the reception area, she paused briefly to compose herself. She hadn't been offended by the comment, it was a momentary pebble on what she intended to be a steady path, but she knew the game Cassandra and others were playing. They judged appearances before substance, something Madison had learned to navigate during her tenure in previous roles. Instead of fetching keys or participating in the petty mimicry of office hierarchy, she deliberately chose another route. She turned sharply away from the administrative desk and made her way toward the HR office on the other side of the building. The corridor was quieter here, less cluttered with the high energy of marketing staff and more subdued in its professional gravity. Nearing the door, Madison straightened her posture and smoothed the taut fabric of her tank top, anticipation humbling the tiredness in her limbs. The door opened before she could knock. Henry Mayhew, the company's HR director, stood ready inside. His warm smile contrasted with the formality of his dark suit. "Madison, glad you're here. We expected you a few minutes ago," he said, motioning her inside. "Thank you, Henry," Madison replied, stepping in confidently. She closed the door behind her with a subtle click. The HR office was a cozy, well-lit space, walls lined with framed photos showcasing company events and employee milestones. It felt like a place where decisions were made, where people found their footing or faced the consequences of missteps. Henry continued, "I wanted to meet you before you started. The team looks forward to your leadership, but as you've seen, first impressions haven't exactly been smooth." Madison nodded. "It's expected. Everyone likes to test the waters before the tide changes." Henry chuckled lightly. "That's one way to say it. Cassandra, our office administrator, didn't quite realize who you were when she saw you. She thought you were support staff." Madison smiled thinly. "I gather so. No matter. She'll learn. I'm here to focus on getting results, not the attire." Henry's eyes twinkled with understanding. Speaking of which, I want you to know that the leadership team is fully behind your appointment. Your record speaks volumes, a decade leading high-impact teams across global markets, multiple awards for campaign innovation. The board was unanimous. Madison felt a familiar surge of energy but kept her tone measured. Thank you for the confidence. I intend to earn their respect daily. Henry handed her a folder containing orientation materials, contact lists, and key upcoming projects. You'll be meeting the team shortly. There's a session scheduled at 10 a.m. in the main conference room. It's vital for setting the tone from the start. Madison glanced down at the clock on the wall. 9:30. Plenty of time. Before you go, Henry added cautiously, Cassandra has already been sharing the story about today's misunderstanding with others. I wanted to warn you, it's spreading fast. Madison tucked the folder under her arm and waved a dismissive hand. Let them talk. It's a privilege to challenge assumptions. Leaving the room, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The halls once again swallowed her footsteps as she navigated the labyrinth of the office floor. She noted clusters of employees exchanging whispers, their heads turning as she passed. Some wore cautious smiles, others held expressions still tinged with skepticism. Madison wasn't discouraged, she merely acknowledged this was part of the process. Back out in the main office area, Cassandra was already holding court among a small group near the coffee machine. Her voice carried a victorious edge that sliced through conversations. I told her right to her face, if you want to be successful here, you have to dress the part. Can you believe it? The assistant tried to look like she belongs, but anyone with eyes could see she was out of place. One young man chuckled and nodded. I thought you handled that brilliantly, Cass. Cassandra's smirk deepened. Of course. Somebody needs to keep order around here. If she thinks she's coming in like some big shot, she's got another thing coming. A woman in the group bit her lip, glancing toward the hallway where Madison had disappeared minutes before. Do you think she really is the new department head, though? Sounds almost like a joke. Cassandra's eyes narrowed. It's in the official email. But it's obvious none of us were warned. Maybe the higher-ups just sprung this on us to throw us off. The group laughed lightly, feeding off the shared amusement at the perceived absurdity. Meanwhile, Madison sat down quietly in the small lounge by the HR office, pulling out her phone to check some emails from her previous office. She reviewed strategic notes, identified critical ongoing projects, and jotted down initial ideas for the first meeting. Her mind was a whirl of campaigns, team structure, and timelines, but always anchored in the reality she had just walked into. She was here to lead, to change perceptions not through appearances but through action. As the clock ticked closer to 10 a.m., Madison rose, smoothing out the creases in her tank top once again. The hum of the office behind the glass walls gathered into a murmur, as if the building itself was waiting in anticipation. She paused at the door of the conference room, took a breath, and stepped inside, ready to claim the role she already owned. The glass doors of the Vantage Corp main conference room slid open with a soft, methodical whisper. Madison Blair stepped in confidently, filling the space with a calm authority that subtly shifted the eager energy of the assembled marketing team. Chairs scraped gently against the polished floor as employees settled, their eyes curious and a bit uncertain. The rectangular table, polished to a mirror sheen, sat at center stage in the room, surrounded by an eclectic mix, young strategists, senior creatives, analysts, all united by the gravity of this first meeting. At the far end, standing beside a large digital screen ready to present, was Raymond Everett, the Vice President of Operations. He was a tall man in his late 50s with a graying beard and an air of quiet command. His suit was impeccable, and his gaze held a steady warmth. He surveyed the room, spotted Madison walking in, and smiled with genuine approval. "Ladies and gentlemen," Raymond began, his voice carrying easily across the room, "thank you for assembling on short notice this morning. As many of you know, today marks a significant change in leadership for the marketing department." He gestured towards Madison. "Please welcome Madison Blair, our new head of marketing." The murmurs intensified briefly, whispers passing through the team like a gentle current. Madison took her seat at the head of the table, her posture erect but relaxed, eyes scanning the room as it settled into a tense hush. Just then, the conference room doors opened again. Cassandra, the office administrator who had earlier misjudged Madison's role, slipped inside quietly, clearly a minute late. Her cherry-red blouse contrasted with her crisp black slacks, and her makeup was just as meticulous as ever. However, as her eyes landed on Madison seated confidently at the head, her body stiffened imperceptibly. For a heartbeat, Cassandra's smile faltered. Her mouth opened slightly as if to protest or gasped in disbelief, but no sound came. She blinked rapidly, swallowing her surprise. The rich bubble of arrogance that had buoyed her earlier now deflated beneath the weight of realization. The team's attention caught on the instant. Some exchanged glances tinged with quiet amusement, a few grinned knowingly. The atmosphere thickened with an unspoken acknowledgement that the tables had turned. Raymond cleared his throat, glancing at Cassandra briefly before continuing. "As you can see, Madison comes to us with extensive experience leading high-performing teams. We believe her expertise will elevate our strategies and bring fresh perspective." Madison nodded politely at Cassandra, who shifted uncomfortably in place. She lowered her gaze, folding her arms tightly, attempting to shrink into the room's edges. A junior analyst to Madison's right whispered under her breath with a smirk, "Guess fetching keys wasn't exactly the plan she expected." Madison leaned slightly toward the analyst and smiled, a quiet acknowledgement of the shared moment without inviting gossip. Raymond's voice broke the murmurs again. "Cassandra, since you've just joined us, please take a seat." There was a noticeable pause before Cassandra, defeated, lowered herself into a chair near the back, avoiding eye contact with Madison. The meeting progressed, but the shift was palpable. Where a flicker of tension might have called for whispered judgments, the team's focus aligned quickly under Madison's command. As the session went on, Madison outlined ambitious plans to ramp up the company's digital presence and rejuvenate client engagement through innovative campaigns. Her voice was firm yet approachable, effortlessly weaving technical insights with motivational undertones. Throughout the discussion, Cassandra remained silent, a stark contrast to her earlier dominance on the office floor. She barely raised her hand when asked for input and directed no further glances toward Madison. Toward the meeting's end, Raymond added, "Madison will be coordinating one-on-one sessions next week to better understand each team member's current projects and ideas." The subtle invitation sent a wave of excitement through the room. Participants nodded, some exchanging brief smiles and hopeful glances. As the team began gathering their belongings, the whispers resumed but carried a different tone, one threaded with respect and cautious optimism rather than mockery. A few employees lingered near Madison, eager to greet her. Off to the side, Cassandra gathered her purse and slipped out quietly, her steps measured. Walking back through the corridors, she felt a mix of frustration and something unspoken, perhaps the stirrings of humility, or at least, recognition. Outside the conference room, Madison allowed herself a brief breath. She straightened her shoulders, eyes bright and steady. The challenge had begun in earnest. The initial assumption about her role had created ripples, but today's meeting had set a new current, one defined by capability, not appearances. Madison touched her phone, prepared to begin emails and scheduling, every decision from this point on to be guided by focus and results. In the core of the Vantage Corp office, the once dismissive gaze of Cassandra lingered in Madison's mind, not with resentment, but with the resolve to lead stronger than any prejudice cast her way. The room's atmosphere had shifted perceptibly, like the subtle change in lighting when the clouds part after a long storm. Madison Blair sat poised at the head of the conference table, the polished surface reflecting the determination in her eyes. The team, now fully attentive, watched expectantly as Vice President Raymond Everett prepared to formally introduce her credentials. Raymond adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and began. Allow me to take a moment to share some details about Madison's background, details that, I believe, will underscore the reasons for her appointment. He scanned the room, making eye contact with several staffers who had previously exchanged skeptical glances. Madison brings over a decade of leadership experience in marketing strategy, both here in the United States and overseas. In her last role at a Fortune 500 company based in New York, she not only doubled the digital marketing team's efficiency but also spearheaded several multi-million-dollar campaigns that significantly boosted brand visibility and customer engagement. A murmur of approval swept quietly through the room. She's the recipient of multiple industry awards, Raymond continued, including the National Marketing Excellence Prize and the Creative Innovator Award for 2 consecutive years. Moreover, Madison has a unique gift for recognizing talent and nurturing collaborative environments that encourage innovation. As the VP spoke, Madison's composed presence reinforced these words. Her casual tableau, once a source of surprise and, admittedly, mockery, began to make sense against the backdrop of impressive credentials. Raymond concluded, I trust you'll find her leadership style both refreshing and results-driven. Madison leaned forward slightly, her tone calm yet authoritative. Thank you, Raymond, for that generous introduction. She paused, measuring her words carefully. I want to be candid with all of you. I came here today wearing workout clothes, deliberately. I had a morning training session before heading straight to the office. But more importantly, I chose this simplicity because I wanted to observe how the team interacts when preconceived notions are challenged. I believe that leadership is not demonstrated by the clothes one wears but by respect earned through actions and mutual understanding. The room was silent for a moment, the weight of her words settling in. I also want to acknowledge that your work here is impressive. My goal is to build upon the foundation you've laid and to do so through fairness, transparency, and collaboration. Together, we will develop strategies that elevate us all. Heads nodded, and an energy of renewed focus seemed to ripple through the team. Cassandra, who had been slouched near the back, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Though her eyes flickered with a reluctant respect, Madison sensed that true acceptance would take time, and that was fine. Before opening the floor for questions, Madison took a moment to address a question she anticipated. I recognize that appearances can shape initial perceptions, she said lightly. But I ask you to look beyond that. I plan to be accessible and approachable, and I hope to learn as much from you as you do from me. Leadership thrives on trust. A junior strategist spoke up. Thank you for being straightforward. It means a lot to know you value transparency. Another team member added, and your international experience is impressive. We're eager to hear fresh ideas. Encouraged, Madison smiled warmly. I look forward to collaborating with each of you. With that, she moved into outlining immediate priorities, streamlining the content calendar, intensifying data analysis to track campaign effectiveness, and developing cross-departmental partnerships, especially with sales and product development. Her plan was concise yet ambitious, emphasizing teamwork and communication. As she spoke, Madison's personality came through, grounded, pragmatic, yet inspiring. The voice of a leader who valued substance over flash but understood the nuances of managing both people and projects. Toward the close of the meeting, Henry Mayhew, the HR director who had welcomed her earlier, slipped in quietly and took a seat near the door. His nod signaled implicit support. Before dismissing the meeting, Madison addressed a final practical concern. I'll be holding one-on-one discussions with everyone next week to better understand your viewpoints and challenges. Meanwhile, my door remains open. The meeting broke with a flurry of conversation, but now, the dialogue was energized and optimistic. Outside the conference room, Madison and Henry shared a brief moment. Your approach is already turning heads, Henry said with a smile. It's rare to see such a deliberate mix of humility and strength. Madison chuckled softly. I'm not here to impress with appearances, only to prove results. Henry nodded. We're fortunate to have you. As the day progressed, Madison took a moment to reflect on the encounter. She knew some would see her casual dress as a statement, others as a flaw, some might resist change altogether. But she stood firm in her belief that leadership was earned in actions, not appearances. This belief had guided her career across various firms and markets, from managing sprawling teams in London to revitalizing campaigns in Tokyo. Each time, she had chosen substance over style, performance over polish. And here, now, she intended to do the same. Later that afternoon, as she walked through the corridors, the atmosphere toward her shifted noticeably. Employees who earlier whispered now greeted her with nods, smiles, or brief conversations peppered with questions about upcoming projects. Cassandra, however, remained an exception. When their paths crossed near the break room, their eyes met briefly. Madison offered a composed but subtle smile, neither dismissive nor inviting. Cassandra, caught off guard, looked away quickly but with a trace of something softer beneath her guarded expression. This unspoken exchange marked a turning point, one where barriers could begin to fall. By the end of the day, Madison's careful blend of humility, clear communication, and strategic insight had reset expectations. She was not just an outsider in workout clothes, she was a capable leader who asked her team to rise with her, not against her. With plans laid and respect cautiously earned, Madison felt the familiar thrill of a challenge accepted, the first steps toward transformation well underway. Midway through the afternoon, the HR department summoned Cassandra to a private meeting. The normally confident administrator's stride faltered slightly as she approached the familiar office where Henry Mayhew awaited her. The HR director's expression was measured but firm. There was no room for negotiation. Cassandra, Henry began without preamble, I've reviewed the reports about your conduct this morning, specifically, your treatment of Madison Blair. Her role as head of marketing is clear and official, and your behavior undermined not only her authority but the professionalism we expect here. Cassandra folded her arms defensively, but Henry continued, because this is your first formal warning, we're assigning you to a mandatory professional development program focused on workplace respect and leadership dynamics. Additionally, you will be relieved of scheduling duties for the next quarter. This is not a demotion, but an opportunity to realign with company expectations. The weight of the reprimand pressed on Cassandra. She had long enjoyed informal authority in the office, but this was a clear message. The atmosphere was changing, and her resistance was no longer tolerated. She nodded slowly, swallowing any verbal protest. Understood, she muttered. Henry offered a small encouragement. This is about growth, Cassandra. We value your contributions and expect you to use this time productively. Later that day, whispers fluttered through the office corridors like fluttering pages of a book. Wherever Madison moved, colleagues greeted her with newfound respect and openness. Where once a cautious observer, she was now the central figure of collaborative conversation. Marissa, a senior strategist, approached Madison with a warm smile. Your vision for the department is inspiring. The team's ready to support you all the way. Max, the data analyst known for his skepticism, added, your insight during the meeting today made a lot of sense. I'm looking forward to working closely with you. Madison's calm confidence and clear direction had bridged initial doubts and invited trust. Despite this groundswell of support, Madison maintained professional distance where it mattered most. When she encountered Cassandra in the hallway near the break room, the tension was palpable but controlled. Cassandra stopped, briefly meeting Madison's eyes. There was a flicker of apology, or perhaps acceptance, in her gaze. Madison nodded once, sharply but not unkindly. "Let's move forward professionally," she said quietly. Cassandra's lips pressed into a thin line, then she gave a tentative nod before turning away. That interaction, brief as it was, signified a subtle truce, a recognition of Madison's authority and a willingness, at least on the surface, to respect it. In the days that followed, Madison continued to establish her presence firmly. She held one-on-one meetings with each team member, listening intently, asking probing questions, and offering encouragement. Her leadership style emphasized collaboration, accountability, and respect. The team dynamics improved noticeably. Cross-functional projects gained momentum, and the department's energy felt renewed. One afternoon, Madison walked through the workspace, noting the subtle changes: laughter shared around desks, impromptu brainstorming sessions, and people leaning in to listen. It was a space alive with engagement. Employees greeted her with genuine smiles and nods, her authority no longer questioned but embraced. Passing by the glass walls of the marketing bullpen, Madison felt a quiet satisfaction. She was no longer the woman in workout clothes mistaken for an assistant. She was the head of marketing, respected, accepted, and in control. Her pace was steady, assured, as she moved through the office, a leader in her element. The story closed with Madison settling into her office late that evening, the city skyline twinkling beyond her window. She allowed herself a brief smile, knowing the real work was only beginning, but confident she had laid the foundation. Change had started, not by appearances, but by actions, and Madison was at its helm.